What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am here with the Round 3 battle of the CPC tournament, this time against the Alabama Altarias, coached by Jay. I really don't have much info about him as a player outside of the fact that he might be a little bit inexperienced. That's just kind of the vibe that I'm getting from some of the comments of the other people in the league. But I really can't take him lightly because the team matchup is actually really bad for me. And I say that because it's centered around Volt Turn, so a lot of U-turn and Volt Switch users. And one, I have nothing that is immune to Volt Switch, so we can always click Volt Switch freely. And two, his primary U-turner is Mega Beedrill, and my team really just doesn't have much at all for Mega Beedrill. So overall, the team matchup is very tough. Coupled with that is the fact that my team is really centered around more of a bulky offense approach, actually leaning a little bit more towards semi-stall, in that most of my stuff is pretty fat, and while some of it can go offensively, I think the most effective play style with my team is probably semi-stall, and he has a ton of stall breakers and wall breakers, and he has slacking Rampardos, he has Aggron, which can click Choice Banded, Head Smash and do a ton of damage to anything, he has Diggersby, Talonflame is easily one of the best stall breakers in the game, and Mega Beedrill hits really hard, so he has a lot of things on his team that are enormous threats to mine. And that's going to make preparation a little bit difficult, and I've said this to a few people already, and I do firmly believe this. I think this is quite possibly the toughest matchup I've ever had in draft formats, so it's going to be tough, to say the least. But let's go ahead and take a look at the team I decided to bring this week. I started off with Clefable, as the majority of his team is pretty heavily physical, and by that I mean that all but two of his Pokemon have their best sets in the physical category. So the only two Pokemon that don't primarily hit on the physical side are Jolteon and Suicune, and really both of those are pretty well dealt with by this Clefable set. So I figured that a fully defensive Clefable with dual boosting, Calm Mind, and Cosmic Power would be very effective this week, coupled with Stored Power as he has no Dark types, and really his switch-ins to Clef are going to be potentially a Stallbreaker Talonflame, or one of his Steel types, which, I mean, the Steel types are primarily low tier and not the biggest threat in my eyes. Granted, they might surprise me, like I've been surprised a little bit the past couple weeks, but I don't think they're really going to be capable of taking out Clef unless they have something like Roar. So yeah, overall I think Clefable's pretty strong this week, and yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We have Megalodi. Now this set is a little bit gimmicky, I would say, but I also feel that it's going to be pretty effective, because with my team being so weak to Mega Beedrill, I have to have some way of luring it. And I don't really have things that can really you can't capitalize on luring a U-turn with Mega Beedrill, because U-turn obviously forces him to switch, so I can't run the Bug Resist Berry and take it out with something like that. I could potentially run a Lure Clefable for the Beedrill. I'm expecting a Poison Jab, I can absorb that and then kill it with a Flamethrower or something, but I don't think that's Clef's best option this game. Clef's best role is clearly to be a win condition this game, not a lure, so I need to make sure it maintains that role, and in doing so I have to have some other way of dealing with Mega Beedrill. That is going to be through a Sucker Punch Megalodios. Now Sucker Punch does about 50% to Mega Beedrill, with Mega Beedrill being so frail I need no investment whatsoever to do about 50%, and as long as I can maintain my rocks on the field, which actually should be no issue whatsoever considering he has no way of getting rid of rocks, then Megalodios should be able to pick off the Mega Beedrill at a certain point in the match, as all Mega Beedrill has to do is take 2 turns of rock damage, or take 1 turn of rock damage and a Rocky Helmet damage from something else to be very close to, if not in range, of a Sucker Punch from Megalodios. Now further, I'm running Psych Up on this to really counter the Suicune, as if Suicune decides to get greedy and set up a few Calm Minds, I can just come in, set up a Psych Up, take negligible damage from a Shadow Ball or Ice Beam at worst, and then proceed to 2-hit KO it most likely with a Psy Shock. So this is really a good countermeasure to the potential Suicune. Actually, the pretty likely Suicune, as on paper Suicune has a pretty good matchup against my team, so I want to make sure I have some way of dealing with it should I get up a couple Calm Minds on something, and or my phasers aren't able to handle it for some reason. So overall, pretty decent set. Psyshock is the best coverage move here because he has no dark types, and his steel types really aren't the biggest of threats to Megalodios. So Psyshock should be able to do damage to those regardless. And yeah, so this also gives me a better way to hit Spidef Talonflame, which I think is actually pretty possible against my team, as Spidef Talonflame is actually a good answer to Melodic, or to defensive Melodic. Not necessarily a counter, but it prevents Melodic from sometimes beating it 1v1. It depends on the set entirely. But overall, I think Stallbreaker Talonflame, probably Spidef, is the best set against my team. So I need to have ways of dealing with that, and this is one of my ways of doing so here. The EVs here let me outspeed Adamant. Adamant Slacking, as Slacking's kind of a big threat to my team because it hits so hard, but Slacking's also pretty terrible. So as long as I can make sure it can't do too much at once, I should be okay. But outspeeding it with a few things should definitely help me to that end. So yeah, that's the Megalodios. Next up is Infernape. This is going to be a dedicated lead, as he has no way of getting rid of Stealth Rocks. We want to put those up on turn 1 regardless of what he leads with, and that's going to be what I do in this game. Now, Endeavor is very good on a Focus Sash set because, especially if I'm dropped down to my Sash by some powerful attack, Endeavor is going to bring my opponent down to 1 HP, and I can pick it off with a Mach Punch. Mach Punch has the majority of his team pretty well as he has so many, like, several steel types. He has 1, 2, 3 steel types? Yes, 3 steel types and a handful of other things that are weak to fighting stab, or just fighting moves in general. So Mach Punch is very strong this week, coupled with Iron Fist. And then in addition to that, Thunder Punch was the coverage move of choice to hit the Talonflame and to hit the Suicune. So that's the Infernape, again, speed creeping, adamant slacking. Next up is the Melodic. Now this has 2 rules. Really 3, I guess. 1 is Scald spam, because he doesn't have really any switch-ins to Scald, so I can get some maybe nice burns on things that come in. And if he wants to switch in Suicune to absorb the Scald, then he can go for whatever he wants to go for. I can haze him or Dragon Tail him out if I wanted to shuffle him around on the rocks. Or he can go for a Scald of his own and give me a Marvel Scale boost, which is actually fantastic against this team because he is so physically oriented. And if my defenses are boosted because of Marvel Scale, then I will be in pretty good shape. So that's overall the Melodic set. Plus I have Rocky Helmet to help get Mega Beedrill into range of Sucker Punch for Megalodios. I am 100% convinced that Megalodi will get the kill on Mega Beedrill this week, one way or another. And it's just going to be a matter of getting it in that range due to Stealth Rock and Rocky Helmet damage. So yeah, that's the Melodic. Next up, again, this is nearly fully physically defensive because it's essentially everything on his team is physical. So next up is the Leafeon. This thing is primarily here to be a decent switch into Earthquake from Diggersby, as my team overall is pretty weak to Earthquake. Especially if I were to run a Heatproof Bronzong, which I am, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. But Leafeon overall, it's again a defensive mon. I believe 4 of the things on my team this week are defensive, and that's really just the best way to approach this game because he has no means of getting rid of hazards. I want to whittle him, and the best way to whittle is by using walls, in my opinion. So this set is Wish, Baton Pass, Curse, Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade is the best coverage move against his team, as it's only stopped, I guess, by 3 things on his team, and those are Talonflame, Mega Beedrill, and Klinklang. Klinklang, while that's kind of a threat, I think what I can do against that is just Baton Pass or Curse and Baton Pass into something like Bronzong or even Melodic, not really fearing the, I believe it's Wild Charge. As much as with a Curse up especially, Melodic should be able to rack up a lot of recoil damage and then Dragon Tail it out. So regardless, I think Wish is just there to support my team. Baton Pass for momentum purposes. I could have Run Protect there, fearing the slacking a little bit, but I really don't think slacking is coming. It just doesn't seem like a good option against my team when I have so many potential Wish Protectors, and really when he has so many other better options against me by abusing his Volturn Core. So I don't think slacking's coming. For that reason, I opted for momentum and potentially passing a Curse into Melodic to make it that much more of a threat. Next up, or I'm speed creeping Adamant Diggersby here. So next up is the Bronzong. This is my dedicated Talonflame counter. Now it's only a counter if he does not have a combination of Taunt and Will-O-Wisp. But if he has that combination, then I am screwed. I'm just going to say it, I'm probably screwed if he has that combination. I can't do much about it. I could try to wear it down with various things in Stealth Rock, maybe like Dragon Tail from Melodic to shuffle it out. Maybe he'll misplay and not get up to above 50% before I shuffle him out. I don't know. But if he is not a Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, Talonflame set, then this will shut him down 100%, as long as I don't miss a Rock Slide, which I am prone to doing. But that's kind of the idea with this, and yeah, this should deal with all offensive variants of Talonflame, and even those that only have Taunt and not Will-O-Wisp. So that is the team. So let's go ahead and jump on into the battle, and I'll show you what happened. Here we are with the match, and kind of like expected, he brought really the best 6 mons against my team. I guess the last slot, the Aggron slot, was a little bit up in the air, as he had so many steel types that really could fill that role, as likely being his counter, maybe to Clefable, or his attempted counter, I'm not really sure, but a steel type role. Aggron, I guess, was one of the better options in that slot, but the other 5 I thought were given. The Jolteon, Talonflame, Mega B, Diggersby, and Suicune. I thought all those were coming for sure. The game plan, though, just like I mentioned before, is to lead Infernape, set up Stealth Rocks, let him wear himself down through recoil from my Rocky Helmet and from Stealth Rock damage, and then hopefully pick him off with priority in the end from the Infernape and or the Megalodios. So that's kind of the game plan. Maybe I can get some sweeping going with Clefable if he lets me get carried away, but obviously that shouldn't happen. It's not the best set. Like, the dual boosting set with Clefable really isn't the best set in the world, especially if preparation is adequate. But in case that preparation isn't adequate, Clefable definitely can be a win condition in the game. I brought the set just so I'd have a potential sweeping option in case he neglected it. So that's all I have to say at this point. Let's go ahead and jump on into the battle and see what happens. So I decided to lead off with my Infernape just to get up rocks. I am on a focus sash, so I'm not fearing anything from this Aggron, and he just decides to go for a Toxic, which is a good play. It breaks my sash and really prevents me from going for an Endeavor immediately on the next thing to come in. But I am going to go ahead and switch out, expecting him to try to take me out with an Earthquake, as I just deal negligible damage with a Mach Punch, as he does have Sturdy. There's no real point in me just going for an attack there. And then I pull the double from my Leafeon into my Bronzong, predicting the Toxic. However, he just goes for the Taunt, which is good information to have, and he reveals Metal Burst. So this actually is kind of a big deal, as if he had EV'd his Aggron properly, where it would be, I guess, drop speed, nature, and 0 IVs and speed. I think it can underspeed Bronzong, and in that case, he actually would have taken my Bronzong out right here with a Metal Burst. But fortunately for me, he did not EV it correctly, IV it correctly, to where that was an effective strategy against Bronzong. So I am able to do a bunch of damage to it with Earthquake, and it will force him out into his Talonflame as I just go for another free Earthquake. Really no reason not to. I wanted to take out the Aggron if I could, as that's one of his few answers to Clefable, it looks like. So now he goes into Talonflame, goes straight for the Tailwind as they go for the Rock Slide, so I don't really understand that play as much, especially when my team is obviously very fat as is. I don't know how a Tailwind actually helps, but regardless, he goes into his Suicune after I take out the Talonflame with the Rock Slide, and that'll force me into my Melodic, which is fine because I am trying to fish for the burn against my Melodic so I can have the Marvel Scale boost, allowing me to take hits better from Diggersby and from Mega B. He reveals that his attacking move is Shadow Ball. He might still have Scald, I'm not really sure, but Shadow Ball makes sense for the Lottie, and given my team composition, I think it's feasible for him to be mono Shadow Ball. But I am just going to go for a Haze followed up by a Dragon Tail to try to shuffle him out, maybe bring in the Beedrill, but I get the worst possible thing in Jolteon, so I am going to be forced to go into Clef here to take whatever he wants to go for. Turns out to be a timid spec Shadow Ball, so Clefable eats that up pretty well. Fortunate it wasn't like a Thunderbolt, as that would have done a lot more damage and had a chance of 3 KOing me, but I'm going to take this as an opportunity to set up a Cosmic Power, as I know he can't take me out with another Shadow Ball unless he gets a crit, and Cosmic Power is easily the best boosting move of choice there when his best answers to me are all physical. So go for Cosmic Power here. I don't know what set he is, but I will pause briefly. If he was a Swords Dance set, Cosmic Power was still my best play on this turn, which I guess I'll go ahead and show instead of pausing it. Cosmic Power was still my best play on this turn because it would let me do a good chunk of damage to the Diggersby with Stored Power at +2, or +2/+2, and if I only had one boost, Stored Power really is not going to do any damage at all to Diggersby. So I figured his best options were to go for Return if he was banded, and even so, I don't believe Return would have been able to 2-hit KO me after Cosmic Power or Swords Dance, and if I have +2/+2, then the Swords Dance won't really matter, and I'll be able to take a hit from it, do some damage to it with Stored Power, and that will put it in range of Mach Punch from Infernape. So that was the idea there. Also, it put him in range of a Psyshock from Megalodios. But he turns out to actually be probably a Choice Scarf, definitely a Choice Scarf Diggersby, and he just goes for Knockoff, I guess expecting my switch into Bronzong, but I'm not going to risk my Bronzong at this point in the match because I do think it still has utility, so I just start going for boosts, and he gets lucky and gets a crit with Discharge, so I'm going to actually lose my Clefable here, when actually at this point I think it would have swept his entire team if I'd gotten off in Soft Boil there. So a little bit unfortunate, but now I'm going to have to find a way to win a little bit differently. Here I just go into my Leafeon, and it forces him into Aggron, which takes the hit decently well, reveals the Rocky Helmet, but that's not really too important here because I do have leftovers on this, and Leafeon is far from win condition, but he just switches in his Diggersby into the Leafeon, which is a play I really disagree with, as I easily could have just gone for another Leaf Blade, not fearing this, and yeah, I don't really understand that play whatsoever, but I just go for the Baton Pass for momentum purposes, thinking he'll go into like Beedrill, but he doesn't, and I just go into my Lottie, get off a good chunk of damage against the Diggersby, putting it in guaranteed range of Mach Punch from Infernape, and he goes straight into his Suicune on my Lottie, as I actually predict him to stay in and go for another knockoff, going for the roll, so I go into my Infernape here. I'm not sure if that was a prediction on his end, or just he used this as his default switch into Mega Lottie. Not really sure, but regardless, it is what it is, and he is forcing me out into my Bronzong, which is essentially useless this match. I'm not too concerned about that, but I did also feel that he could pull a double into his Jolteon here, expecting me to go into my Milotic, as Jolteon would be able to obviously just click Thunderbolt, Specs Thunderbolt, or Volt Switch against my Melodic, and that's not something I really want to have happen. So I thought Bronzong was a good middle ground play here, and I figured he'd stay in and try to take me out with a Shadow Ball, but Bronzong's too bulky for that, and it's going to be able to survive that, take it out with the Earthquake, so his two biggest threats are probably gone, although Mega Beedrill is still a pretty enormous threat. Diggersby's not as much of a threat at this point because it's in range of my priority, but it's still good to keep an eye on, I suppose. But with Talonflame gone, I decided it was a good idea to go ahead and sack my Bronzong. Here I did not expect him to stay in. I figured he would try to switch into Beedrill, or into Suicune rather, so I just go for the Thunder Punch, but he just stays in for some reason, and I'm going to go ahead and take it out with a Mach Punch here as well. So I really disagree with him sacking that right there, as well as Scarf Diggersby put in a lot of work against my team, but I guess to each their own. And now I am going to go ahead and endeavor down the Suicune, as I think I am at low enough health to make this a worthwhile decision, as it should put it in range of the Psyshock from Megalodios, and that means that I unfortunately lose my Infernape to Toxic, but that's fine because, like I said, it is in Psyshock range, and it should force in his Aggron here, as I would like to have forced in his Beedrill, but he would still be slower than me, so unfortunately I'm going to go ahead and switch to my Melodic instead of just cleaning up the game right there with Lottie. But regardless, he does actually go for the Toxic there, which was, in my opinion, a pretty bad play. It was not wise, because Melodic has Marvel Scale, and once he gives me Marvel Scale, it guarantees that I can survive 2 hits from the Beedrill, and that just essentially clenches the game for potential Sucker Punch Megalodios, but I guess it is possible that he wasn't aware that Megalodios could use Sucker Punch. So regardless, that's what it's going to come down to, as he goes for the X-Scissor, and he absorbs the Rocky Helmet damage, takes a bunch from Scald. He's down to 19%, and he makes a good play here and goes for the Protect, as I probably should have just gone for the Recovery here just in case he went for Protect. That's my bad, but regardless, he should be in range now, or definitely is in range of a Sucker Punch from Megalodios, so that is what I'm going to go for here, and that will be the game. So we managed to escape the matchup, and like I said, it was a very tough matchup, and we're fortunate to come out on top this week, but we were able to do so using some pretty gimmicky sets, and yeah, so that's that. Next up, we actually have a fun rematch from a couple seasons ago against Crobat for the win and the Los Angeles Nidoking, so I'm pretty excited about that. Danza is a good friend of mine, and we haven't had a battle in quite some time, or a league match in quite some time, so it's going to be a fun match. Definitely looking forward to that, and we will see if I can keep moving on in this tournament. This puts us, we're still in the losers bracket, of course. This puts us, I believe, in like the losers octafinals or something, so if we win against Danza, then we'll be, I believe, in the losers quarterfinals. So we're working our way back up to the championship round, and that's the goal. We want to get back to the championship, maybe get a rematch against Gypsy on the way there, and we'll just kind of see what happens. But thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all next week. Peace.